Hello and welcome to the conclusion of a year-long challenge. So 12 months ago I stood just over there and I announced that what I wanted to do was to be able to lift my own body weight over my head. Now I weigh about 95 kilos, so that's not an insubstantial amount. In fact, it was going to mean pretty much doubling my strength. Well, time's up. Did I get there? No. Did I get any stronger? Yes. How much stronger? Let's find out together. I've mentioned before in other videos that one of my patrons, Dan, has been a huge help to me throughout this challenge. Dan is an ex-strongman competitor, so really knows his stuff. Dan mentioned a few times the concept of overhead anyhow, so not worrying too much about form or a particular movement pattern. When I started doing this, I was doing a simple clean and press. So clean is where you grab the bar off the ground, throw it up in the air, catch it here, and then press. With Dan's encouragement, I've moved on sometimes, moved on to doing a clean and jerk. So a jerk, clean is the same to here, and then the jerk part is to throw it overhead whilst dipping down underneath the bar. You can get more weight overhead that way, but it's more challenging technically. I'm just mentioning all this because you'll see me doing both here, just basically whatever it takes to get the weight overhead, because of course that is the point of the challenge. So we'll start with some warm-up weights and then I'm going to work up to a maximum lift. Along the way I'll show you the thing that I think is my biggest achievement for the year. So the bar itself weighs 15 kilos. 35 kilos. $45 kilos. What we got now is 20, 20, and the bar itself 55 kilos. Now this is significant because 55 kilos was my absolute maximum that I could lift a year ago. First try I didn't even get it. Second attempt I got there, but it wasn't pretty. I was going to say easy peasy, that's not quite true. Right, let's see how far we can go. That might be it. Not even close. So in that 1 year of fairly consistent training, I've gone from being able to lift 55 kilos absolute maximum to being able to lift 70 kilos. I can't do the sums in my head, but I'll put on the screen what a percentage increase that is. And I think it's reasonable. It's a reasonable increase in strength. But of course it does mean that I've failed in the challenge. So I've failed to be able to lift my own body weight over my head. and it seems like a very distant goal, possibly unattainable. Biggest lesson I've learned over the last 12 months is of the importance of recovery. So I expected recovery to be important, of course, but it turns out at my age it's critically important. At the end of the last video, I talked about changing the weekly routine to 3 workouts. So that's heavy, light and medium. And that worked great for a while. Oh, and with running in there as well. But as the weight increased, as the weight that I was lifting overhead increased throughout my progression, I had to first of all cut the running, then I cut the medium day, and then I cut the light day. In the end, last couple of months, all I've been doing is a session of overhead work, and that's it. And then I have to wait a whole week to recover enough to do another session of just that. Everything else has gone by the by. And I think that's the real difference. Between as I am now and as I would have been if I'd tried doing this in my 20s or 30s or even 40s, just the sheer time it takes to recover. But all this, of course, applies to building strength. So building strength, like building fitness, is really hard work, but keeping either of those is far easier. And every time I get down about thinking how hard it is to get stronger at this age, at the age of about 50, I think about what it would be like if I'd left it another 10 years. So that's my silver lining. I've often heard it said when it comes to planting trees that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. And for me, that's definitely the case with strength training. If I'd started this 2 decades ago, well, I might have got somewhere. But the second best time to plant a tree is right now, and that also applies to strength training. So if I look at the challenge as just being an excuse to get me to do some strength training, I think it's been a roaring success. Just as I was getting ready to film this, I watched a video from Thrall, who's I mentioned before, and is one of the only fitness influencers, I suppose he's called, one of the only fitness people on YouTube that I watch anymore. And he just put out a video just recently called How Strong is Strong Enough, and it really nicely sums up my own thoughts on the matter. I'll link to Alan's video in the description of this one, but to sum it up, he listed 3 reasons why people might want to get into strength training, and I think they're really valid. The first one he lists is that it makes everyday life easier. The second reason is that it makes you more durable, both in terms of accident or injury. And the third one is that it can help you live longer. And I would add to that third one to say it can help you live better for longer. And I was thinking to myself, if I'm going to go to all the trouble of getting old, which has not been a given throughout my life, but if I am going to get old, I'd like to get old like my granddad. And I've got footage of him at the age of 93 or 94 or something like that, swinging a pickaxe. I don't want to get old like my nan, who barely made it into retirement before having a whole series of strokes, and the quality of her life just went right downhill. So strength training can help carry you into old age in much better shape. And that's one of my motivations as I'm getting on. I've already spoken about nutrition. I don't have anything new to add to that, but I do have some equipment news for you. What we have here is my progression of footwear throughout the 12 months. I started off with these trail runners, and these are 0 drop trail running shoes, not suitable for weightlifting, it turns out. You need your heel for stability. You want your heel to be slightly up. These are my work boots, and these are actually quite good for weight training. And the fact that they're so heavy actually gives you a bit more resistance if you're doing, say, pull-ups as well. So a reasonable option. But then Dan sent me these because it turns out he's got a sideline in buying and selling weightlifting shoes. Weightlifting shoes are a brilliant thing to buy second hand because if you think about it, it's not something you ever put any wear on. They're not comfortable for walking about in. So you've got here the same built up heel, so you've got the ideal profile for stability, but it's completely flat on the bottom, unlike normal boots. Now having proper weightlifting shoes doesn't make me any stronger, of course, but the extra stability can help squeeze out an extra couple of reps, which when you're strength training, that does make a difference. And as Dan said to me, it does help you get in the role, get in the right mindset. And I know what he means, because I'm just the same when I put on my blacksmithing apron. And you just feel ready for business. And finally, on the end here, we've got a pair of red gloves. Now, somebody did take the time to comment that if I'm wearing a pair of gloves, I need to make sure that they match my purse. Well, here's my purse, and it's blue. The implication, of course, is that wearing gloves when lifting weights is somehow unmanly. But here's the thing. If I'm in the workshop doing any kind of work and it's freezing cold, I'll probably wear gloves. I might even wear a hat. If it's nice and warm, then I won't. But either way, thankfully, my sense of manliness is completely unaffected. 12 months hard work. Was it worth it? Yes. Yes, it was. And to prove it, I'm going to carry on strength training. I think I've got potential for a bit more progress. I'm going to do something a bit more generalised, not just lifting things overhead. And I'm going to carry on getting stronger, just very, very slowly. Which is better than not at all, or getting weaker. I think strength training is a lot like saving money. If I'm still around in 10 years, I'm going to really appreciate what I'm doing right now. I might make one more video on this subject to showcase the new routine. We'll see how it goes. But that's it for now. I just want to say a massive thank you again to Dan for all his help and encouragement. Having Dan on board was a real boon to pushing me along to progress. And to anybody else still watching, thanks for sticking by me through such a long challenge. Hopefully I've inspired one or two of you to do something similar. That's it for now. See you next time. Cheers.